Okay, welcome to session 2. We're starting off with talking about doing a quick review of cardiovascular system, which is what we talked about in the last session. And next, after that, we will go to talking about foods and their appropriate sizes. And then finally, we will end up talking about different exercises that are good for your cardiovascular system and just for your overall health in general. Next slide. Okay, so to start off with, we would do a quick review of the cardiovascular system. I would ask them what is cardiovascular disease, because they should have learned this in the previous session that we had just last week. And I would expect answers like, it is the narrowing of all of our blood vessels and arteries and making it hard for blood to pass through. Sometimes it causes plaque buildup and they get stuck, and it can even cause things such as heart attacks and even stuff like strokes. And then I would ask them how it affects their body. Like, how do they think that it affects their body in a way that's good or bad? I would expect them to say that it's bad because it is the narrowing of all of your blood vessels and arteries. And so they should know that that's bad. When you don't have as much room for blood to move through, it can cause problems. Next slide. So in order to show this to them, I would have this game set up in like the back of the room. I would have an area that's like roped off. I would instruct them to go back there and to stand in the roped off area, and then explain to them it's kind of like musical chairs in a way that when there's music playing, they would need to be moving around just like at random, kind of like blood in a vein. And then whenever the music stops, they would just need to stop and move towards the center. Every time the music stopped, I would move the ropes in a little bit closer every time. And I would have them know that I'll be like walking around kind of simulating more blood. And every time that the ropes move in, it just gets harder and harder for them to move. And it would end up basically where none of us can move at all. So when the game was over, I'd have them come back and sit down. And then I would ask them these questions. So I would ask them what the activity was simulating. And I would hope to get back from them that they would say that it was a vein or an artery with blood moving through it. And then I would ask them what the purpose of the activity is. And I would hope to get back something along the lines of, that was showing how plaque build up in the veins and arteries as they get smaller and smaller and the blood can't move. And since I was simulating being the blood, I would not be able to move, which could cause some sort of heart attack. Then after that, I would move on to talking about food and the portion sizes, starting with the fruits and the vegetables, and then going over to milk, grains, meats and beans, and then the oils, and talking to them about that. This would take probably 5 to 10 minutes to get them to understand. And then we would go on to our next activity. So it's called What's on My Plate. What they would be doing is at the tables they would have buckets of plastic food for them that are in the correct portions. And so the object of the activity would be to create 3 healthy meals, one for each time of the day, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And they would use the plastic food portions in their bucket. I would have them get into bigger groups, so like 2 tables would work together, because it's obviously not feasible to have that many different kinds of plastic food for them to use. And I would have them work together to build these plates and give them about 10 minutes to kind of come up with something together. And at the end of that 10 minutes, they would present to the whole class what they had come up with. And as a class, we would decide whether that was actually healthy or not healthy, or if they went together very well. And that would just kind of be a time for them to learn how they can cook and what sizes and how much they should eat of each food. Next slide. So then after that, we would move on to the exercises. I would explain to them that it's really good to get 150 minutes of exercise each week by doing things such as walking, running, kickboxing, and yoga. And I would ask them if they participate in any sort of activities like this, if they even just like go for a walk, besides moving from your desk at work to go to the bathroom or such, like if they do it outside of a normal walking or a normal run into the store and back out kind of thing. We would discuss which ones might be best for them, talking along the lines of, are you physically able to participate in something such as kickboxing? I'm not talking about like MMA fighting or anything like that, just something along the lines of moving your body in a way that's different. Or even yoga, because it's very hard to be in those flexible positions. And so we would talk about and discuss each one and see which ones they thought would benefit them the best. So then, as an exercise activity to get them moving, we would have a 15-minute routine set up for them. And so normally once you get the hang of it, it will take 15 minutes, but seeing as how it's their first time seeing it, they would need to see everything that we're doing and learn how to do it so they wouldn't hurt themselves. So this would probably actually take about 15 to 20 minutes. So what we would do is we would start with doing 3 minutes of yoga and stretching. I say yoga and stretching because sometimes yoga positions are difficult to get in. And so if you stretch before, kind of like just do some basic static stretches, then that will help them get into yoga. So, but as they get more advanced, they'll be able to start out doing just yoga poses. And then I would have them stand up or just get in a position where they can run in place for a minute. And then we would jump right into doing a minute of jumping jacks. And because they're kind of new at this, they're going to want to rest because they're probably not fit cardiovascularly, and that's why they're here in this class. So I would give them a 30-second rest and water break, just kind of catch their breath, get some water because you don't need to get dehydrated. And then we would go back into doing 1 minute of alternating lunges, and then do 1 minute of run in place again, a minute of some form of kickboxing. Then we would do another minute of jumping jacks, and then they would get another 30 seconds rest and water break to, again, just give them a minute to catch their breath and catch up. Then we would do 2 minutes of brisk walking around the room. And then we would end up doing 3 minutes of yoga because we're already stretched out and loose. We could probably get into more of the yoga positions. As we go through this, I don't expect them to do it all perfectly or be able to do it for the full 3 minutes or 1 minute. And so it's more just a learning day. They would just go through the motions, learning what to do and how to do it correctly instead of just trying to go through it to get their heart rate up, even though that is the object of all of this stuff. So if they can't get through the first 3 minutes, then I would just have them stop because I don't need them to injure themselves while they're here. If they can't run in place for a minute, they would just stop and just take a break as they need because there's no need to overwork yourself. So next slide. After that, I would bring them all back in, have them all grab some water and take a seat at their seat. And I would do a quick review of them. So I would ask them as a review, like, what is cardiovascular disease? I've already asked them basically this question 3 times, so I'd hope by the end they know what it is, which is like the narrowing of your blood vessels and arteries. Then I would ask them this true or false question, which is you need to increase the amount of solid fats you intake. And I would ask them true or false. I would hope that they would say false, because as previously mentioned, what I would have previously mentioned is that fats and oils need to be limited because that actually makes your blood platelets stick together more than just in general. And my third question is, what exercises best increase your cardiovascular health? And since we just went through them, I would hope that they would say that the running, the walking, the yoga, and the kickboxing would be the ones that do it best for them. After we go through those questions, I would ask them if they have any questions for me as far as clarification on what they need to know, or what things that might not have been clear to them or what might be fuzzy, which is not uncommon for a subject such as this, which is very in-depth. And so we go to the next slide. These are my references. This is where I found all of the stuff that I used. And I don't know if I would necessarily show them this, but I would have this available for them. I have a lot of this stuff printed out for them in the back, so that way they could take it with them outside the class. Next slide. These are the Howard Gardner's intelligences that I used. And for the first slide of the objectives, it was visual and spatial because all they did was see what was up there. And this is all like on a PowerPoint, and it's got colors and everything like that. The next one, which was the cardiovascular disease review, which would be verbal linguistic, because it was just me basically telling them, having a review. The cardiovascular disease activity is body and kinesthetic because they got up and they moved around and kind of used their body to demonstrate an activity. Then for the food and portion sizes, the verbal linguistic, because again, I was just kind of teaching them and they were listening. And then again, for the myfoot activity is body kinesthetic because they got up and they used the food hands-on. Exercises to help me best was verbal linguistic, again, because I was just telling them about it and giving them the information that they needed. The exercise activity is body kinesthetic because they really use their body in this one. And the wrap-up is interpersonal because they would ask questions, answer my questions, and it just kind of help bring it all together. And so that